The Baltimore Ravens sent a clear message to Isaiah Likely by extending Mark Andrews. We talk about that and so much more coming up on Locked On Ravens.
You are Locked On Ravens, your daily Baltimore Ravens podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
You are Locked On Ravens. Welcome into the show. I'm your host, Kevin Oestreicher of Ravens Wire, here with you on the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day, and now the #1 sports podcast network. Appreciate everybody for being here and making Locked On Ravens a part of your day. And thanks to all the everydayers, the first-time listeners. If you're somewhere in the middle, thank you as well. We have 5 days a week plus more of daily Ravens coverage here. We have a jam-packed episode today. It is crossover Thursday, so we'll talk with Chris Carter of Locked On Steelers about the upcoming massive Ravens and Steelers Week 14 matchup. But before we do that, we have to talk a little bit about this Isaiah Likely, Mark Andrews dynamic. Obviously, Mark Andrews gets the extension from Baltimore yesterday in a pretty shocking move, in my opinion. And I think the Ravens sent a pretty clear message to Isaiah Likely in doing so. So we'll talk about the Andrews extension as well as Likely and even Charlie Kolar a little bit here. And we'll also dive into the Ravens having a pretty good practice on Wednesday with guys being there and practicing. So we'll dive into that as well. Want to tell everyone and remind everyone today's crossover Thursday edition of Locked On Ravens is presented by PrizePicks. Download the PrizePicks app today and use code LOCKEDONNFL to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. On Wednesday evening, the Ravens extended Mark Andrews 3 years, $39.3 million. Currently, that deal in terms of average annual value ranks top 5 among all tight ends. Andrews was not my choice to be extended. I would have probably preferred Isaiah Likely even still, but Andrews still, we have to give him his respects. While the playoff performance has not been there, and that has been a glaring issue for Mark over the course of his career, we know the Raven that he's been since coming into the league in 2018. We know the prowess he's brought to the field every single day and the production he has had as well in a Ravens uniform over the course of his years in Baltimore. 56 touchdowns. I mean, that's a lot of touchdowns. He also has 473 catches, 5,862 yards. He and Lamar Jackson have established unreal chemistry. So in no way do I think like, oh, the Ravens signing Mark Andrews is bad. You have to worry, I think, about the fact that he is 30 years old, and that we'll see if he declines or not over the course of that deal. There is certainly a possibility in that, but I think it's more about, for a lot of people, Isaiah Likely, and the fact that it feels like the Ravens have this guy on their roster right now who is 25 years old, who has flashed a lot of potential, who has had a down year. I think we can all admit that, but I'm not putting too much stock into that, considering we saw him have his best game of his season on Thursday night outside of the fumble. Obviously, that was not good and a bad moment, but we saw some of those flashes, plus the foot injury, him coming back, having to play with Cooper Rush and Tyler Huntley, etc. I guess there's a possibility the Ravens could franchise tag Isaiah Likely. That would be a 1-year, fully guaranteed contract of 15.8 to be exact on that franchise tag number for what it will cost the Ravens to bring in Isaiah Likely back on the franchise tag. But I think the Ravens have sent a pretty clear message here to Isaiah, and that to me is, well, it can be a couple of things. I think, honestly, there are probably a couple messages. One is I think that the Ravens did try to extend Isaiah Likely. Of course, I don't know that for a fact, but I'm pretty sure when you have a player like Isaiah Likely, you're going to try to extend him, especially with his age, the talent we've seen on display, the improvements. So I think the message that they sent to Isaiah Likely was, you're just asking for too much money. I feel like that is probably what happened here. Again, I don't know how the negotiations went, what went on, and how much Likely is asking for, but I think that seems pretty clear to me, is like, they were able to get Mark Andrews probably at a cheaper rate than they would have gotten Likely for. And again, probably gives the Ravens more avenues to re-sign some of their own guys. Maybe they can use some of those savings. And again, how much savings is it when you're talking about this, where, if he's asking for franchise tag money over 4 years, like $15 million, $60 million, it's about what, $3 million more per season than Mark Andrews got, which is not small, but it's not big either. So at least in my opinion, they seem to have chosen Mark Andrews over Isaiah Likely. And can you really justify, depending on how the money for Andrews works out, can you really justify paying two tight ends, a combined 26, 27, $28 million per season over the next 2 or 3 years? What I would assume is that this Andrews deal is probably a 2-year deal that is dressed up like a 3-year deal, where they'll have an out after that second season. But it's very, and now you got to factor in Charlie Kolar too, who I think has made some money. So I think honestly, the Ravens, another message they might have sent to me here, or at least what I'm getting, is that could be Andrews and Kolar over likely, and maybe that was kind of what they had to decide on. And maybe likely is a little cheaper than Andrews and Kolar combined, but it's not that big of a difference. And so Kolar hasn't been signed yet, obviously. But if I'm Isaiah Likely, I want to go to a place where I'm the number one tight end and can flourish in that role. Now with Mark Andrews locked up long term for Baltimore here, it's not going to be in Baltimore. So if the Ravens franchise tag, I'm not sure how well that would go over. But if Likely wants that tight end one role, which I'm sure he does, the place is not going to be Baltimore anymore. Also, the Ravens had a good practice in terms of availability with Lamar Jackson being there on a Wednesday. I know that's been a topic of conversation for a lot of different people, but everyone was practicing for the Ravens. Nate Wiggins, who I know there was some concern about his availability, he was out there on that football field. And I think it's a good thing. Ravens got our Darius Washington back there at practice officially, Tavius Robinson back at practice officially. So the injury report has Rashod Bateman and Tez Walker as full participants. Lamar, Tavius, Ardarius, and Nate is all limited. And that's it. So Ravens in a pretty good health spot here for the Steelers game, and a lot to talk about with that Ravens and Steelers matchup. So Chris Carter of Locked On Steelers will join us to break it all down. Chris, it's good to see you. It's been too long doing these usually we get at least one of these in before December, and here we are. December 3rd, so we're recording. December 4th, obviously, is Thursday for Crossover Thursday. This is the first time we're talking this season for this Ravens and Steelers rivalry. And just like we've seen in a lot of these games, there is a lot at stake here for two teams that are tied atop the North at 6-6 and what has been a pretty embarrassing division this season.
Yeah, typically I think in recent years you've said that the AFC North is the best division in football, and you had Hard Knocks to come in, and the AFC North is looking super mid right now. Like it's to the point where like Bengals at 4-8 are like, we got a chance, boys. Like, like that's unheard of. I mean, there is, and I still think it's an outside shot, but there is a shot that the winner of the division has a losing record this year.
Wow. That is correct. And you're right. Like, that is unreal to think. We're usually talking about 3 playoff teams maybe in this division, like 10-win teams. We've seen like and now we're just like, this is the only division in the NFL that does not have a 7-win team through 13 weeks, which is not a great place to be. But because of that, both these teams have gone through their ups and downs this season. And here we are with these two teams being at 6-6. And a lot on the line here, considering right now the Ravens do have the edge over the Steelers with common opponents, 5-3 for Baltimore, 4-4 for Pittsburgh. But obviously this game could really set a tone here, and in both ways, the winner and the loser, I think maybe an indication of where their season could go. So Chris, let's start in Pittsburgh with the Steelers. What is the biggest storyline for them right now as we head into week 14?
It's the defense, and I think needing to be able to stand up in a big way against the offense that ran them over in the playoffs. The Steelers made it their mission to change up their defense going into this offseason to be more prepared to stop rushing teams like the Baltimore Ravens. And to do that, they drafted Derrick Harmon in their first round. With their first round pick, they added in Yaire Black as a 5th-round pick, just a behemoth man from Iowa. They added in a veteran in Dan Aquale. And so they brought in a whole lot of depth on that defensive line to pair with Cam Hayward and Keanu Benton in hopes that would help change things and help that they also signed Malik Harrison as an extra downhill linebacker to help them against the run. But unfortunately for the Steelers, Derrick Harmon is going to miss this game, and his second game in a row that he's missed with a knee injury that honestly none of us really knew that he had until Mike Tomlin announced so last Tuesday. And on top of that, Dan Aquale, the depth guy that they signed to the D-line, he's been out for the season, and he's also suspended for PEDs while he's out for the season on injury. So there's been so now the two guys that you brought in to change things aren't there, and they've had some good weeks. They had, they against the Colts, they limited Jonathan Taylor to the fewest yards that anyone's limited him to in this season so far. But then you got last week where the Buffalo Bills rushed for more yards than the Steelers have ever allowed at home since the opening of Heinz Field / Acrisure Stadium. So it's kind of a dichotomy of success and failure, which Mike Tomlin, he says, hey, that's why we're 6-6, because we've been inconsistent. He's like, I don't like it. And I think that's the question, is which defense shows up against the Ravens, because there's been some defenses the Steelers have brought and they have taken things away. They've been able to take away your first read on the pass game. They've been able to create turnovers. They've been able to stuff the run. And you're like, okay, this defense adds up. But then there's other days where none of that happens. And granted, last week, the run defense gave up a lot of rushing yards. It wasn't a terrible defensive day overall. They only allowed 19 points on defense. So it wasn't like that was their worst showing. They've had worse ones. They've given up 30 points at least 4 times, I think defensively. But that's what has to happen in this game, is they need to see that this defense can battle against Lamar Jackson and keep him contained. And now listen, the whole offense is also a major question right now with the struggles that they've had, especially in the pass game. But I really think this game comes down to, can the defense come out and not just win because they stripped Lamar Jackson here, once here, Isaiah Likely once there, not just win because situation, but they need to win consistently against the Ravens offense that, Kevin, it looks to me like it's been struggling compared to recent years. Lamar Jackson doesn't look as healthy as I've seen him. And I wanted to get your thoughts, is what's gone into the stalls that the Ravens have had in their offense this year.
How much time do you have? I think that'll determine how much we can get. I think if both of us went over all the issues for both the teams we cover, we'd be here for probably like 3 hours, and we'll have a 3-hour episode of this show.
No one wants that.
Yeah, right now the Ravens. I mean, you're right, Chris. It's been abysmal for the Ravens over the last handful of weeks. It's been bad for Lamar Jackson. Lamar doesn't have a touchdown in his last 3 games, which is unheard of. This is the worst 3-game stretch of his career. And there are a lot of reasons for that. But the biggest consistent issue for the Ravens this season has been their offensive line. They have not had good offensive line play this season. To me, Chris, it all starts up front, both offensively and defensively. It starts up front, but particularly for offense, I mean, I don't care who you have at quarterback or running back. I mean, if you can't block guys and open up paths for these guys to protect your quarterback, Lamar Jackson is one of the best, if not the best in the league at making something out of nothing. There's only so much. There are only so many times you can put on that Superman cape and say, let me go and make something out of nothing here. And they've been asking him to do that a ton this season. And the reality is, Chris, he's just been hit a bunch this year. I mean, he took a shot from Ed Oliver in week 1. There was a roughing the passer call on Dallas Turner where he just got leveled, and he's taking a bunch, like Myles Garrett sacks him 4 times again. I mean, being sacked by Myles Garrett doesn't feel good. I haven't experienced it personally, but I can just tell you it doesn't look very fun. It's been a problem offensive line-wise. Their guard position's been awful all season. They didn't do enough in the offseason to address it, and they made that bed. Now you got to lay in it. And so Baltimore, their guards with Daniel Falele, and Andrew Voorhees, they started doing a rotation last week in that Bengals game where they inserted rookie Emory Jones in for Voorhees. And they're a team that does a lot of weird offensive line stuff with rotations. They did it with Ronnie Stanley when he was coming back from his ankle injury to kind of give him plays and possessions off to make sure that he wasn't overexerting himself. But I think they kind of think they're innovative with it. I don't personally agree with it, but it kind of is what it is there. Emory Jones was fine. He looked like a rookie, but they don't have a lot of options, especially after losing Patrick McCary to Jacksonville, who could play all 5 positions at a relatively high level. Roger Rosengarten, their second-year tackle, has regressed pretty badly. Ronnie Stanley has great games and extremely poor games, and I think that all has impacted Tyler Linderbaum, who, sometimes it's about who you're playing next to, and he doesn't have Marshall Yanda playing next to him or Kevin Zeitler playing next to him. It's inexperienced guys or more experienced guys who aren't playing well, and he's had his moments as well this season. I also think that, Lamar, with that fact, I think he doesn't trust his O-line. And I talk about that a lot in Houston with CJ Stroud and what we've seen from them over the last couple of years, where it just feels like CJ doesn't trust his guys back there. And you I think a lot of people say, look, CJ has happy feet in the offensive backfield. He doesn't really know, and he's anticipating. I think we can see some of that with Lamar this season, where you can be so confident and have done something for years, and then all of a sudden you don't trust that offensive lineman, and all of a sudden you start second guessing everything. And it's not all Neil. I mean, everybody has a part to play. Lamar's missed some throws. It's been unfortunate, but with his health situation, I mean, he's been on the injury report every week for the past 4 weeks with a different leg injury. This week it was back to the ankle. That was what, he was on the injury report for on Wednesday for the Ravens heading into this Pittsburgh game. But it's been the ankle, it's been the knee, it's been the toe, the hamstring he missed a month with. He's just been banged up this year, and he illustrated how this is the first time I think he's kind of dealt with something like this, like playing through something where maybe he's not 100% himself. Teams aren't respecting Lamar's legs as much. And that's another conversation where, for the first time in maybe ever, there was Rashod Ali and Lamar Jackson on the field against the Bengals, and they ran an option play. And everybody crashed in on Rashod Ali and let Lamar Jackson just run to the outside free. That never happens because you never want him to beat you that way. But he has looked a step slower at times. He looked better in the Bengals game than he did against the Jets. He looked really sore and uncomfortable against the Jets. He looked better on Thursday night. Hopefully this mini bye they had going into this game will help. But then there are other conversations about the running game usage where there's just Derrick Henry and Keaton Mitchell, who are your two best backs, obviously. They get out snapped by your pass down backer, Rashod Ali. And part of that does stem from game flow. But there were other situations in the game earlier where I thought they could have established that. They also are horrendous in the red zone this year. They were the best red zone offense in the league last season. They are the third worst red zone offense this season, converting on just 46.5% of those clips. The turnover issues last week against the Bengals, they had 5 of them against what is turning up to be a historically bad Bengals defense. And I could go on and on and on, but I'd be here for 3 hours, and we don't have enough time to talk about all these offensive issues the Ravens have. But I think that, again, it's an offense that's looking to find themselves, Chris, versus a defense that's looking to find themselves. And that is, I think, a huge storyline in this game because it's kind of like an unstoppable force meets an immovable object. Which one is going to budge? We're going to see.
I agree. And I think that's the thing here is that both of these teams have talent on them that can be dangerous to other teams. Like I think the Steelers have shown they can beat anybody and they can lose to anybody. I think the Ravens are in the same category right now. Both teams have shown the ability to, when they light it up, they can light it up. But when they stink it up, they can stink it up. And in this game, these two units, I think, are the controlling units that can dictate the pace of this of play here, where if the Steelers get turnovers and they stuff the run and they force Lamar Jackson to have to throw in uncomfortable situations, that could be the factor that wins them the game. But if the Ravens just pour it on offense and they run right through the Steelers defense, the Ravens defense has struggled at times this year too, but I find it hard to think that the Steelers offense is going to wake up. And I know we're going to talk about that matchup on the other side of this break, but I feel like this is where either team can sort of have a get-right game against a team that's on pretty much even footing with each other, and the winner doesn't necessarily lock themselves into, but they're in the driver's seat because both these teams have some tough opponents coming down the stretch here, including a rematch with them in Pittsburgh between these two teams, for the regular season finale.
Coming up for the second part of the show, we'll dive into those matchups because there are plenty of them to talk about. So be sure to stay tuned. Plenty coming your way on this edition of Locked On Ravens and Locked On Steelers. First, this show is brought to you and presented by PrizePicks. This holiday season is one of the best times for sports. Bowl games, big basketball matchups, playoff pushes, it's all happening at once. And while we're all making choices every day, one of the most fun places to make the right call is PrizePicks. PrizePicks is the easiest way to get in on daily fantasy. Just pick more or less on at least 2 player projections, lock in your lineup, and you're in the game. It's simple, fast, and available in 45 states, including California, Texas, Florida, and Georgia. PrizePicks has added an extra layer of excitement to this holiday sports schedule. Creating a lineup takes less than a minute, and the app makes the whole process smooth and intuitive. You can choose from a huge range of unique stats, fantasy score, field goals attempted, free throws made, turnovers, whatever fits your strategy. Download the PrizePicks app today and use code LOCKEDONNFL to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. That's code LOCKEDONNFL to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. PrizePicks, it's good to be right. Moving along on this crossover Thursday edition of Locked On Ravens and Locked On Steelers. Kevin Oestreicher, Chris Carter. We're still here talking Ravens and Steelers football with you. We talked about some of the biggest storylines, and the NFL moves fast, Chris. I mean, one of the biggest Ravens storylines also, Mark Andrews just signed an extension with the team like an hour ago before we recorded this. So I'm curious to see how those Ravens tight ends match up against that Steeler linebacker group that might not have Patrick Queen this week. Do you think he's going to play in this one?
I don't know. I get a sense that he should play. I think he's very confident about it, but we'll see because there's been times the guys have been confident and they haven't played. So I'm expecting Patrick Queen to play. He didn't practice on Wednesday, but let's see how he handles Thursday and Friday. There were quite a few people who sat out the Wednesday practice, but it's not just Patrick Queen, Peyton Wilson, who he's had some good plays against the Ravens in the past. And then also I think that that might be a role where they throw Jalen Ramsey in, because Jalen Ramsey's basically been playing safety for the Steelers for the past month and a half or so, and so I do think that the tight ends are definitely a source of concern for the Steelers. Mark Andrews, Isaiah Likely, they are no strangers to them in their playmaking abilities. So I do think the Steelers are in a position where they have to be aware of what those two can do, what this passing offense can do. So yeah, the tight end's definitely a concern. But it's funny, the Steelers, they made their own addition in Adam Thielen, and I don't think anyone's fooling themselves to say that Adam Thielen is going to be a game breaker for the Steelers. But I do think what he's going to give the Steelers is an experienced route runner who can get open and do certain things that other guys in the Steelers next to DK Metcalf can't do. And one thing I asked Aaron Rodgers about when it came to the Steelers passing attack and what they need to do to get going, because they haven't completed a deep ball of 20 yards or more since week 9. But I asked when I asked him about it, he talked about you need guys to be open. He said we need to be open and more often. When we brought up Adam Thielen, he said that's one thing that he does. And so I don't think that Adam Thielen's going to come in and revolutionize the Steelers offense at all. But I do think that they're willing to try a lot of different things to see what they can get going into, because they do respect the Ravens defense. Aaron Rodgers talked about it a lot Wednesday in the Steelers locker room. But I think that by and large, the Steelers have a general approach to this game of like, hey, they know us, we know them. We need to play to our strengths so that we can dictate the pace of play here.
Yeah, and I am now curious with the Andrews extension. Does this give Isaiah Likely more motivation? Because I don't think they were ever going to re-sign both of these guys. So does Isaiah Likely now have a late season resurgence after coming back from a foot injury earlier in the season? And does that start against Pittsburgh in week 14? Because we know that he's probably going to get a contract from a team that's going to pay him tight end one money. Hasn't had a great year. And I mean, neither is Andrews outside of the touchdowns. I mean, it's just the whole offense has been out of sorts this season for, really ever since Lamar went down. And even when they were playing well, they were losing all the games. The offense was putting up 40 and 30 points in. So just a weird year, not just for the Ravens, obviously, but in the NFL. I'm wondering if Isaiah Likely has a little boost here at the end of the season for Baltimore. But one of the other matchups I'm looking at right now, Chris, when it comes to the Ravens and the Steelers, is just how Aaron Rodgers looks against this Ravens defense. I mean, you talked about it a little bit in that first part of the show. Obviously, I mean, Rodgers, I thought, started off the year fine. Like, I think he was out there, was doing the thing a little bit. And then obviously with the way that the season is gone, obviously the injury to the wrist and having under the bloody nose was the big storyline and getting the gash and everything. But that offense has had moments of like, they can't move I thought that Buffalo game was going to end like 3-0. Like I that's how ugly that game looked for a while there. And obviously still didn't go in Pittsburgh's favor, but with the Baltimore defense, Chris, Baltimore's defense was horrible early in the season. They have gotten it together a little bit. The pass rush still needs some work. Their leading sack guy right now is Mike Green with 2.5 on the season. So they're not necessarily getting a ton of pressure. It's been better. They're using blitzes a lot more. Hamilton's moving all around. So they have changed some things. But against the defense that is probably going to give Aaron Rodgers a lot of looks, and let's be honest, Aaron Rodgers has seen every look in the book at this point. How do you think this version of Aaron Rodgers factors into maybe what the Ravens saw from Russell Wilson last season in terms of comparison?
I think that Aaron Rodgers can still see the field. I think he's struggled with it at times lately. If you pressure him, he feels it a lot quicker than he used to. His eyes come down from looking downfield. He's looking to protect himself. He just turned 42, I believe, Tuesday. So like this has been a bit sobering for him to kind of like, be a human being in some ways. But at the same time, he still understands the game. He still knows what he sees and what he wants. That's where I think this could be interesting for the Steelers facing this Ravens team. If they can keep the pressure off Aaron Rodgers and they get a decent run game going, I can see Aaron Rodgers finding his comfort level again, because it's really been a few weeks since he's looked comfortable as a quarterback making plays. He missed the Bears game due to injury. Mason Rudolph was in that one. Didn't look great against the Bills. and now faces a Ravens team that, he gave a lot of credit for when we talked to him in the Steelers locker room about all the different talent that they have from the lines, the linebackers, and the secondary.
With this defense, Chris, what I was going to say with Rodgers is, there are a lot of different things that he has to look out for with this unit. For Rodgers in particular, obviously Kyle Hamilton is going to be all over. He does everything for this team. And I think you also have to factor in, Roquan Smith had a bad start to the season, but he has since turned it on and has been able to flip that switch, which has been good. Their acquisition of Draymond Jones, he didn't have a great game against Cincinnati, but he's really helped this pass rush that hasn't been able to generate a lot of pressure without blitzing. He has helped that a lot. Travis Jones on the interior, he's in a contract year. He's been playing really, really well. So in the secondary, Nate Wiggins, he did practice on Wednesday after suffering an injury in that Bengals game. He's big. If he's out in this game, that'd be a really big conversation point. Marlon Humphrey has had moments this season as well. But Chidobe Awuzie, honestly, has played probably some of the best corner he's played in his career for the Ravens this year. He's been a really, really big factor. And I know that, it's moving away from George Pickens, bringing in DK Metcalf. They're still trying to find others to step up outside of the number one guy. So I'm curious to see who Aaron Rodgers will go to, if not DK Metcalf, which other players will have to step up for the Steelers in this one.
Yeah, I think that's the thing here is the Steelers have been trying to figure that out. Another clip that I'll probably play a little bit more of on tomorrow's Locked On Steelers show is Aaron Rodgers asked about the deep passing game and what has to unlock there. And for weeks, he's talked about, hey, teams are double teaming DK Metcalf. It's the formula that they're going with. So we got to get other guys open. And I kind of asked him, is that more about structured passing plays, get guys open, or is that about route running? And he kind of was, he wouldn't answer definitively one way or the other. But the bottom line is they still need it to happen. And so when I look at what's been going on with the Steelers, there are guys open at times. Like there's been times DK Metcalf's been open and Mason Rudolph won't see him and Aaron Rodgers won't see him at times. But that's the thing that I think the Steelers need to try to hang their hat on a bit more in this game, is to get this passing game going so that it can back the Ravens off the run game. Because if I'm any defense right now and I'm playing the Steelers, I'm crowding the line of scrimmage. I'm not letting Jalen Warren or Kenneth Gainwell beat me just by getting to hit a hole and be fast. I'm forcing them to earn it. Tough yards every single time. And if Aaron Rodgers beats me downfield, Aaron Rodgers beats me downfield, but beat me downfield because he hasn't connected on a pass of 20 or more air yards since week 9. To me, that's where if I'm the Ravens, I try to do that. I think the Bills did quite a bit of that of trying to attack the run game and say, please beat us downfield. And the Steelers just couldn't. And so if I'm the Ravens, I challenge Aaron Rodgers in a very similar way.
Yeah, and it's funny because the Ravens' defensive mantra has been don't break, where they're not going to give you a lot of those deep shot opportunities. Right. It's more so take that short stuff, intermediate stuff, go down the field, and in the red zone, you're kicking. You're either punting or kicking a field goal. And with the Ravens' offense, with Lamar Jackson, you would figure that that's enough to win you football games. Now, over the last 3 weeks, the way this offense has looked, it's been tight. They almost lost to Cleveland. The Jets game took them some time, and obviously Cincinnati was awful. So have to be a big bounce back week for a lot of different players on both of these teams. Coming up, though, we're going to dive into how each team can win this football game, keys to the game, and how each team can come away with a win. So stay tuned. Plenty coming our way here on this crossover Thursday of Locked On Ravens and Locked On Steelers. Moving along, it is Locked On Ravens. It is Locked On Steelers. Kevin Oestreicher and Chris Carter still here with you on this crossover Thursday edition of the show. Chris, we know that these Ravens and Steelers games, you just throw everything out the window. It doesn't matter how good you're playing, how bad you're playing, who you have on your roster, who you don't have on your roster. Anything goes when it comes to the Ravens and the Steelers. So in your mind, what are the keys? What are 3 keys that Pittsburgh has to deliver upon to win this game on Sunday?
Well, the first key is to stop the run. If they don't stop Derrick Henry and Lamar Jackson on the ground, this game's going to be over before it starts. And the Steelers know that. It's, again, even without Derek Harmon, I think that this is a week where they know they get that message, and there's going to be a commitment to stopping the run. 2, get some chunk plays on offense. Because I really do think the Steelers do a lot of little things well on offense. Like they are really good at their screen game right now. They're really good at their swing passes where they get the running back some space and they make a miss. But you got to make defenses be scared of your deep ball again, or at least your intermediate ball. And they just haven't hit on a lot of those lately. So if the Steelers are able to hit on some of those passing plays and be solid with downfield passing, it's going to put the Ravens in a bind, and then that's when you see the balance of the Steelers roster sort of come into play. But they haven't done that a lot this year, and so that's that's why it's going to be an interesting challenge. And my third key, I guess, if I was to pick one, I guess I would say just let the DBs win, and saying the Steelers DBs, because I think to stop the run, especially without Derrick Harmon, it's going to take an extra body. It's going to take some extra commitment. It's going to take some efforts that's going to keep the Ravens contained. And I think that with that, you might need to live with your cornerbacks playing on islands. The Steelers let go Darius Slay, so he's not a part of that equation anymore. I'd be curious to see if Asante Samuel Jr. Gets the spot over James Pierre, who's been an undrafted guy who's played very well this season. But I do think that there's a chance that they find they find some answers there. But if I was to pick three things, it would be stop the run. It would be get some chunk plays on offense, and to trust your DBs to beat the Ravens pass catchers. And if you do those three things, I like the frame that they set themselves up with to have a chance.
You say stop the run. I say establish the run for the Ravens. I mean, it goes hand in hand for each other. I mean, all the points you mentioned there, not having Harmon is big there, but I think that this Ravens team, their identity is still the running game. And while they have certainly become more balanced over the course of Lamar Jackson's career, particularly under Todd Monken, that's still where their bread and butter is. And it's been weird to see them in a game like that Cincinnati game where they're not running and not using Derrick Henry and whatnot. And so if you can establish that early, your play action game works better. You're able to bait those linebackers and safeties up more. You're able to use the read up. So there's just so many things that are predicated on the run game. And even if it's not the run game, establish the short passing game. That can be an extension of the run game. Throw some screens, see how the Steelers defend against those, and just kind of go from there. I think as well, like we talked about, the red zone offense just has to be better. I mean, this is a game, we've seen so many games in the past between these two teams, Chris, of it coming down to a last-second field goal or, a last-second touchdown to put a team over the top, and every point matters. And, leaving 4 points out there on the field multiple different times is just not going to be acceptable in a game like this. You're going to have to get every point you can. And while these offenses right now are still looking for answers, you don't want to be the team where you look back and say, man, if we really just punched the ball in from the 2-yard line in the second quarter, would have won by 1 instead of lose by 3. So that's another situation. Baltimore just has to be better in. And then finally, I'm just going to say that they can't allow the Steelers to make this game a gross game, because I think that at the end of the day, the Ravens offense has higher scoring potential than the Steelers do. Absolutely. And what we've seen for example, last year against the Steelers at Acrisure, the Derrick Henry fumble early in the game and all those other moments, and Boswell goes crazy. Like that's the formula for the Steelers here, I think, for the Ravens, assuming the Ravens offense is out there performing at least to somewhat of the level we know that they can. But Pittsburgh and Tomlin, they're so good at finding ways to just slop the game up and move the game along slowly and just find little ways to win. And if you're the Ravens, I think you have to come out with a statement like we've seen the last 2 times these teams played, the wild card round and the game before that against the Ravens in M&T Bank Stadium. Those games are rare where you see one team just dominate the way that that we saw the Ravens do against Pittsburgh. So don't let the Steelers slap the game up. Chris is great. Be sure to check him out over at Locked On Steelers, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. That's all I have for you here today on Locked On Ravens. Thank you so much for tuning into the show. On the way out, be sure to like and subscribe button in video form, follow along in audio form for 5 days a week, plus more of daily Ravens coverage. Coming up tomorrow, we'll be rounding out the week with more Ravens coverage. So be sure to stay tuned. I'll see you right back here soon on Locked On Ravens.